Hi there, I'm Mary Jane the Art Siren, otherwise known as ArtSirenMJ, and you can call me MJ for short. To put it simple for the sea snails out there, I'm an artist and a mermaid, which means I love to draw and make content just about as much as I love to swim and eat shellfish while I brush my long hair and listen to dark stories of sailors sinking into the depths of the sea because of how witty and captivating an art siren's drawings can be. But I'm out of the water and ready for my third video on this channel. Thank you for being here. In this one, I will be telling you my thoughts on the Inu-Yasha manga while you watch me draw the main two characters, Inu-Yasha and Kagome. And I might sneak a few other sketches here and there, we'll see how it goes. But before we jump into that, I want to give a shout out to my supporters for requesting and funding this piece over on my Ko-fi page. I had set a goal to purchase a new work chair since mine recently broke, and I promised that when the goal was met, I would draw these two. I'm very grateful for how kind and generous everyone is, and how much they care that I'm comfortable while I draw. You're the best, and I'm so lucky to have you. If you're new to my channel and want to leave a request in the comments of what I should draw next, feel free. I'll include it in my next Ko-fi voting poll. Maybe your request will be chosen for my next goal. And if you love the art and what you're seeing, I think I deserve it, please consider a tip over on my Ko-fi as well. Thank you. Okay, now about the Inu-Yasha manga. I recently binge-read the entire thing. It's long. Too long, actually. I don't think it needed to be as long as it was. Also, quick background info, I loved Inu-Yasha since I was 6 years old. I watched the anime so many times. Inu-Yasha was my first crush, and I wrote so much fan-fiction and drew so much fan art all the way up into my late teens. The obsession was insane. And I will always be biased when I say I love Inu-Yasha. So when I talk about the manga and its errors, know that I'm not a hater, I'm the opposite, I'm a huge fan. But I also believe in learning and being critical of the things you consume and the things that you love. And as a comic artist myself, I like to learn from others and hopefully become better at my craft as well. That being said, this video will contain spoilers, obviously. Also, forgive me for any mispronounced Japanese words, and if you're going to share your opinion in the comments and debate about Inu-Yasha, please do, but be kind to each other. Schools of fish swim in harmony. That's what we want here, to be harmonious. Okay? Great. On to the review. I don't think the story needed to drag on as long as it did. It was unnecessarily long. In fact, some chapters of the manga surprised me when I was reading what I thought was anime filler, but it was canon and in the manga. I understand that a big purpose of this manga is meant to explore a lot of Japanese legends and folklore, but I don't think that it should have been done at the cost of the story or its pacing. It was not integrated well. The story also tended to drag on a lot, especially in the second half. The first half of the manga, in my opinion, is a lot more interesting than the second. I think it's because this is when we were meeting the characters for the first time, and Raku was just starting to cause his mischief and schemes, so it was all very eventful. The second half, however, had a lot of recycled scenes. It would always go down to something like this. When Raku does something annoying, they run into him, they attack, they fail, and he gets away. Rinse and repeat. That's the second half of Inu-Yasha right there, before they finally beat him. Which brings me to my thoughts about the fight scenes. This is probably my biggest complaint about Inu-Yasha. Well, aside from the love triangle, but we will get to that. I promise. I will get to the good stuff after. Let me just get out my criticisms first. So basically, whenever there was a fight scene in the manga, I found myself just rushing through to the end of the battle because the fights were so boring. All the characters just charge at each other randomly until the plot grants them their victory. There's no interesting choreography that makes the fights look really cool. Inu-Yasha just swings his sword around and hopes for the best. This also happens with other characters too. It was disappointing that Sango, being the most equipped fighter on the team, barely got to do much of anything other than throw her hiraikos, even though she has so many techniques under her belt. And without the Kazuna, Moroku was pretty useless. I didn't enjoy that after meeting the characters, none of them really grew or got stronger or learned anything new. Other than Inu-Yasha's Tetsaiga learning new moves, which don't end up working most of the time anyway, the character's offense doesn't really change. I know near the end, Sango's weapon does get a power boost, but the fact that she can take on Naraku from one power boost after Inu-Yasha has had to upgrade his sword so many times to do the same amount of damage is kind of ridiculous, because that just shows us that the power scaling in this series is all over the place, with no real consistent structure. It's whatever the creator Rumiko decided to throw in there at random, which in turn takes away all the stakes. It's worse than Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, we know Yugi is going to win every duel, but at least we get to enjoy the how. There is no how in Inu-Yasha. Naraku gets away because he just can. Because barriers, I guess. And Inu-Yasha wins his battles because he just does. Because biggest sword wins, I guess. Very disappointing. I enjoy action a lot, and there's a lot you can tell an audience through a fight scene, and it was just completely missed in this manga. That brings me to Kagome. I know a lot of people would say that she was the most useless of them all, but I have to disagree, especially in the first half. She was developing her archery skills, and Naraku was very threatened by her growing powers. It was really cool. But then in the second half, she stops growing. Most of the time that she used her arrows, it was just to purify surrounding miasma. That's it. At least that's all I can recall. Also, she only had one kind of arrow. It would be really interesting if she learned to master her powers and be able to shoot arrows with different effects and purposes, or even learn to make barriers, you know? I would also have been much more interested if Kagome dropped the schoolgirl uniform, because it made no sense as to why she was wearing it in the feudal era when she would spend weeks there at a time. It wasn't like she was going back and forth every few hours, that there would be little time to change her clothes. You know, if the intention of Rumiko was to keep that relatable schoolgirl look for younger readers, then she should have made the modern era and her education more relevant to the plot. Maybe Kagome learned something in school that helps them in the past. This would keep Kagome in uniform more often because she was actually attending school frequently during her time in the modern era, as she would travel back and forth from past to future. But Kagome was infamous for being absent from school all the time, and we don't see her in school for more than a handful of very filler-like scenes, so I don't understand what the thought process was behind the idea of having the main heroine in her middle school uniform for most of the series, when her school had little to no importance in her adventure at all. She literally stays and lives in the feudal era at the end of the manga, so her modern education didn't even matter in terms of telling the story. Again, early in the manga, Kagome was seen wearing several different outfits. I wonder if this was the original plan, to have Kagome change as she got used to this new world. But maybe the editors didn't agree. I don't know how all that behind-the-scenes stuff works, and I haven't read any of Rumiko's other works to compare. But this was a missed opportunity, especially for Rumiko as an artist, to play with fashion and make Kagome a more unique character with some personality instead of your cookie-cutter 15-year-old anime schoolgirl. In Sailor Moon, Usagi loved to eat junk food, play at the arcade, and cry a lot. This character profile is relevant because this makes it harder for her to be a good leader of a crime-fighting superhero team. So with Kagome, she doesn't have any real hobbies or interests other than studying. And even so, studying doesn't play a role in her character whatsoever, and she doesn't really express herself much aside from being jealous of Kikyo most of the time. And I think that's why there's a whole side of the fandom who find Kagome very annoying. But this is all just my opinion. Another thing. Now, this is not to nitpick, but I would have liked the story to establish the world. The entire series takes place in the same area of Japan. That's how Kagome can go through the well back and forth anytime. They never travel that far, so does this mean the jewel fragments were only scattered around a certain area? Why? What about the rest of Japan and the world? Do they know about the jewel? It would have been really interesting if this was touched on, that's all. Now let me cover the love triangle. My gosh, the love triangle. Before I get into it, let me just say, I don't really ship Inu-Yasha with either of them. Early on in the manga, I liked him with both girls, but then by the second half, I really stopped caring. All of the potential and the chemistry just wasn't there anymore, in my opinion. But let me explain of something I thought of. I have this theory that Rumiko was originally intending to make Kagome and Kikyo one and the same person. The reason I think this is because the way the story is set up, Kagome and Kikyo are always connected and spoken of as a pair. Kagome was referred to as Kikyo's reincarnation, or Lady Kikyo Reborn. She had the jewel inside of her when it was last seen with Kikyo. She has the same spiritual powers. Kagome has Kikyo's soul before Kikyo was resurrected, and then they shared it half and half. They look exactly the same, especially early on. They have a similar scent, according to Inu-Yasha. They have the same destiny to purify the Shikon jewel. They both love the same man. And before Kikyo dies, 50 years in the past, she said that she will take the jewel with her to the other world, implying that she is Kagome. I think the original plan for the story was to give Inu-Yasha a second chance at life and to be with the girl he fell in love with. I think that Kagome and Kikyo were meant to become one person, or maybe Kagome would regain all of Kikyo's memories with Inu-Yasha and live with the memories of both her lives. Or, I think that what was supposed to happen was Inu-Yasha and Kikyo, who was now reborn as Kagome, would get to fall in love all over again, while they uncovered the terrible truth about Naraku breaking them apart, and then they beat the demon and overcome everything in the end together, and finally get to live together like they always wanted. Now that's a love story. The reason I get this hunch is because Inu-Yasha's story with Kikyo has a lot more deeper and emotional themes than anything he shared with Kagome. It's quite beautiful if you think about it. A priestess who wanted to be an ordinary woman, and Inu-Yasha falling for the woman who was in his way of finally finding his place in the world as a full demon. They wanted the same thing, to belong in regular society. Whereas the story between Inu-Yasha and Kagome revolves entirely around Kikyo and the jewel. If Kagome isn't Kikyo, why was it written this way? Also, Inu-Yasha and Kikyo have kissed and been affectionate many times in the series, whereas Kagome and Inu-Yasha were denied those opportunities all up until the end of the manga. They never locked lips, ever. And every fan hates this. I think either the editors or maybe reader feedback did not like the idea of them being the same person, and then the story changed direction so that Kagome was her own person apart from Kikyo. And since this means that Kikyo was meant to be the most important character, I would imagine that Rumiko likes the Inu-Yasha and Kikyo ship more, because that's how she wrote her babies in the first place, which would explain why Kikyo got all that attention from Inu-Yasha that Kagome didn't. Once she was separated from Kikyo in script, I don't think Rumiko liked Kagome as much anymore. Even in the first half of the manga, Inu-Yasha looks at both girls in a similar way, and the chemistry between him and Kagome was there due to the fact that she looked so much like Kikyo. Heck, even the core of the plot revolves around the fact that Naraku wanted Kikyo and was jealous of Inu-Yasha. Their love was so strong and intimidating that the entire plot and villain focused around it. Kikyo and Inu-Yasha are so obviously meant to be the main characters. Like, in the story, Inu-Yasha chose Kikyo over Kagome multiple times. He literally broke up with Kagome, saying he wants Kikyo, and that Kagome can leave him if she wanted. Kagome just happened to like Inu-Yasha too much to care. And this was never addressed again. He never took this back or apologized for it later, and he never advanced on Kagome until the very end after Kikyo died the second time and was out of the picture for good. So, all of these variables clearly tell us that Inu-Yasha loved Kikyo more, and that Kagome was supposed to be Kikyo reborn. She even ends up in the same priestess-style kimono at the end, looking even more like Kikyo. And I know that that's your very basic priestess costume in Japan, but they could, we've seen different kinds. Like, they don't have to be identical. They're the same. It's like right in our faces, but that's just my theory anyway. You can disagree. I could be 100% wrong, and that's fine. But if I am wrong, then all I can conclude is that Rumiko failed to write the romance in this series. But enough of the love triangle, let's talk villains. I have less to complain about it when it comes to the bad guys. I think there was a lot of cool characters that Inu-Yasha had to face. Sesshomaru, the Thunder Brothers, many of Naraku's incarnations. The Band of Seven was awesome. Moriomaru, lame. Byakuya, lame. Naraku himself, extra lame. I didn't like villains who don't have an interesting look, who lack personality, and who take way too long to defeat. There's a reason why the Band of Seven was so popular. They didn't drag on so long, they were interesting because they weren't demons, they were phantoms. They were also all different with their own unique weapons, personalities, goals, and strategies. If the fight scenes didn't suffer so much, all of this might have pushed the manga to be a high-quality piece of work in my opinion. Also, on the art side of things, Rumiko's angles and paneling was pretty boring. But this is common among a lot of manga, so I'm not sure what the standard is. I personally appreciate the art of comic layout and cinematic storytelling, and I didn't really see anything great from Inu-Yasha in this respect. Okay, I just noticed I've been talking for already a while now, so let me cut in and jump to the things I really liked about the manga. The first thing is the art style. Rumiko's artwork is very old manga style and just so incredibly simple and cute. It's very wholesome and easy on the eyes. I actually think the manga captures the age of the characters a lot better than the anime. I remember watching the anime and thinking that Kagome was annoying and immature for her age. I thought she was a lot older than she was because, in my opinion, they seem older in the anime, especially with their English voice actors. However, in the manga, Kagome actually looks like a 15-year-old girl. So when she gets a temper or acts like a child, it's because she is, and she doesn't come across as annoying anymore. She comes across as very cute and sweet. She has these stubby little legs and goofy little poses and expressions that you can tell she doesn't quite have everything figured out yet, and like that. I like that in the art a lot. Though this changes later in the manga, which is why I always praise the first half over the second. I also prefer Kagome with the straight cut bangs over the sharp ones, but that just adds to my theory even more that this was changed later because Kagome was no longer supposed to be Kikyo anymore, so she had to change her hair because they were too similar. Just saying. Anyway, my favorite thing about the manga were the characters. They are all loyal and driven, and I really enjoy seeing them interact with each other. Miroku and Sango, though I know are a controversial couple, were very sweet. I personally really loved watching their relationship grow. Sango went from this broken soul who lost everything with nothing to live for to finding love and purpose and looking forward to being a mom in peace, and that's wonderful. I love that Miroku started as a non-serious, lying, lecherous monk, but then he became this incredibly passionate and loyal guy who constantly put his life in danger to protect Sango. For real, it was constantly. It wasn't once or twice, it was all the time. All he thought of was her safety, when before, all he thought of was saving his own life. And Sango did this often for him too. Sango and Miroku are one of my favorite fictional pairings of all time. It just warms me how deeply in love they are, especially in the second half and in the last few chapters of the manga. The sacrifice and selflessness displayed through these characters really inspires me to put my own fiancé first too, and I do applaud Rumiko for doing a good job on that. I hated their only kiss though. What a terrible, unflattering angle. Complete letdown, but better than nothing. And I know a lot of people don't like Miroku for harassing women and being gross with them. I get that, and I agree. But in my opinion, I think that adds to his character growth. I believe in redemption and the ability for people to change their ways, and I think it's beautiful that it was a woman who inspired him to do that. That and a couple of well-deserved slaps to the face. I also really like the character dynamic between Sesshomaru, Rin, and Jokin. Again, the biggest compliment I can give to this series are the characters. A lot of individuality and genuine interaction came from these three. Sesshomaru's stoic attitude with such joy in contrast with Rin and Jokin. Every single time they popped up on the page, I kid you not, I was smiling. Either at something cute or something absolutely hilarious. Except when Kagura died. I was not smiling then. I wish he would have lived just so we could have at least one good thing come out from the entire adventure against Naraku. I really liked Kagura because despite her own nature and how she was born, she turned away from that and chose to be better. That's really hard to do, even in real life. If someone was raised in a toxic home, it's extremely hard not to grow up with those same toxic habits and mimic that behavior onto other people. That's what Kagura essentially did. She went against her nature. She wanted freedom, she wanted to help the good guys, and she did the right thing despite being born and set up to do the exact opposite. I think she's a lovely role model, and it was a shame that she had to die. I think Kana dying was enough to make the point of how the incarnations were suffering as well. I don't think Rumiko needed to kill Kagura too, but that's just my thought. Actually, I have a lot of thoughts. There isn't enough time to cover Sesshomaru, Koga, Shippo, or Kohaku, or go into detail about what I liked about everything, and even the way the manga ends. If you like this kind of video and enjoy hearing me ramble about Inu-Yasha, let me know. Maybe I can do more in-depth reviews about each character. We'll see. So, do I recommend this manga? Honestly, it depends who's asking. If you are looking for a good story, then Inu-Yasha is absolutely not for you. If you're looking for something action-packed and dynamic, Inu-Yasha is also not for you. If you're looking for something with a good romance, again, Inu-Yasha is not for you. So who's Inu-Yasha for then? Inu-Yasha is a good manga for people who want to read something easy, something that they don't have to think about too much since a lot of the content doesn't matter long term, but still has little tidbits of, oh, that's cool. It's good for those who are looking for something cozy, because of the characters and their interactions, it gives me a safe, comfy feeling. Growing up, I considered the characters my friends. There's just a nice sense of belonging in the series. Reading Inu-Yasha didn't trigger any anxiety, didn't make me feel uncomfortable in any way. I mean, there were a few moments of gore, but far and few in between. I also think Inu-Yasha is a good read for other artists. The style is pretty basic, so you can learn how Rumiko simplifies the human figure while still maintaining the main points of anatomy. I think people who are into Japanese folklore will really love it, because there are so many side quests with demons and spirits based on real Japanese tales. And if you read a lot, like religiously, and need another manga to read because you feel like you've run out of content, then yes, Inu-Yasha is for you. So I hope you enjoyed this short review. Of course you did. My siren voice is like ASMR. That alone should bring joy to your life. And of course you agree with everything I said, right? I'm sorry, art sirens think they're all that in a bag of pearls. So humble yourself, MJ. There are humans watching. Seriously though, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the series if you read it. I'm talking about the manga specifically, not the anime, but you're free to share your thoughts on the anime as well. If you like this video and want me to go into deeper about it, let me know. I just might do it. Don't forget to tip me on Ko-fi for my hard work so this mermaid can enjoy a bubble tea on you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked the video. Be sure to subscribe, and yeah, you know what every YouTuber outro is like. The only difference is that I go back underwater when I'm done. So take care of yourself, fish butt, and when you hear of the next sailor who went missing out at sea, it wasn't me.